Hello, third grade. Today we're going to be working on some fractions together. We're going to be starting Module 5, which is the fraction module, and we're going to be doing Lesson 4. So what you'll need for today is some loose paper. It can be paper right from your journal that you've ripped out, or I've got some plain white paper here that I'm going to be working with. You'll also need a pencil or a pen to write with, and if you have some in the house and you're allowed to use them, a pair of scissors. Don't worry if you don't have scissors. I'm going to remind you how to cut paper without scissors today. Okay, bring all those things back and we'll get started doing the work for today together. Okay, third graders, like I said, today we're going to be doing our work together. So in your journal, go ahead and write today's date, which is 5-4-20, and then write the lesson we're doing today. We're doing Lesson 4. We're just going to be doing a part of Lesson 4 together. So once you've done that, it'll look like this. Okay, third graders, now that you've got your journal all set up, we're going to go ahead and make our fraction strips that we'll need. I have a piece of plain white blank paper. Construction paper would also work. If you don't have any of that, this will work just fine also. It's just a piece of paper from my journal, my notebook. Okay, so now that you've got your paper, what I want you to do, whatever paper it is, go ahead and fold it in half like a hot dog. Now, this is what you do if you don't have scissors. Take it and crease it real strong. Make a real strong crease. Oh, I'm using my nail. Can you hear it? If you don't have nails, that's okay. Just fold it, crease it down a couple times real good. Then go ahead and open it up and fold it the opposite way. Right down that very same crease and crease it real tight, real tight. Okay, once you've done that, if you've done it really tight, do you see how strong that crease is? Can you kind of make that out? It's pretty strong. Go ahead and start ripping. Now, if you rip really fast, you're gonna end up with a mess, but if you rip nice and slowly, right down the crease, pulling it ever so gently apart, you're going to end up with two pieces that are very equal and have a very clean line. Okay, I'm going to set this over here. I won't need that for now. I'm going to set it on top of this puzzle that I can't seem to finish. So now that I have this one long rectangle, I'm going to fold it in half. Again, don't have scissors? Don't worry. Do that creasy thing. I have scissors, so I'm going to save some time and go ahead and cut down the crease. Honestly, I think I end up with a better cut when I'm not using scissors. Okay, now you have two long strips. We want 3 thin strips, so take your strip and go ahead and fold it again like a hot dog. And fold it as close to on the edge so they're equal as possible. Okay. All right. Once you have that folded into these, into this very long skinny rectangle, go ahead and cut it down that crease. Okay. So once I've ended up with 2 long and skinny rectangles, I'm going to take it and fold each of them like a hamburger, not like a hot dog. So instead of folding it again long ways, I'm going to fold it in half short ways. And I will need 3 of these, so here's 2. I won't need that one yet. Save this paper because you'll need it later. Now I'm going to do the same thing with this one. Right in half. Okay. All right. Now you should have 3 of these rectangles. They are long and skinny rectangles. Go ahead and pause the video until you get that done. I'm serious, third grade, you're gonna need these. You're gonna need them today, and you might even need them for the lesson tomorrow. So don't skip this part, okay? Go ahead and fold them all up. Okay, third graders, now that you have your 3 strips that look like mine, back you up a little bit so you can see. What I want you to do, what I want you to do is we're gonna partition these into different fractions. You're gonna take the first one and you're gonna partition it into halves. So what I'm gonna do this with me please, fold it in half, hamburger style, and then draw a line right on the crease, and now you have halves. I would also like you to take the next one, and you're going to make this one into fourths. So the way I want you to do that is fold it in half, open it up, take your pencil and draw a line right down the crease, and then I'm gonna close it, and I'm going to close it again. I'm gonna fold it again so that I end up with a really small little square. And then if I open it up, you guys, I will have 4 parts. I'm gonna go ahead and mark them all on the same side so that I have fourths. Now I'm gonna take this last paper and I'm going to make thirds. Now thirds are a little harder for me when I'm folding than fourths. So when I have my paper, I want to make sure that all 3 of my sides are the same length. So I'm going to accordion it. And I'm just going to play with it until I get them to be all about the same size, meaning that the edges line up. And that is not perfect, the one I just did. There's a little room right there, but it's pretty close, so I'm gonna call it good. I'm gonna open it up and draw the lines. I now have thirds. I have fourths, and I have halves. So your next step is to draw these in your journal. So you're going to take your journal that you already got started, and you're going to write a 1, and then draw a representation of those 3 different fractions. Okay, 3rd grade, now that you've made these fraction strips, you're going to go ahead and draw a visual representation on your paper of what you just did. So I'm going to go ahead and draw 1 rectangle here. I'm going to use these lines to kind of guide me. And I'm going to do this one. I'm going to cut it in half. And I'm going to go ahead and shade in 1/2. And then I'm going to write the unit fraction. That was 1/2. And then if I write it as a fraction, I'm going to write 1/2. 2 total parts, 1 of them shaded. Go ahead and pause the video until yours looks like mine, and then come back and we'll do thirds together. Okay, next up is the thirds. So I'm going to draw again my rectangle using these blue lines to help me out. And then I'm going to partition my visual representation, my drawing, to look like my fraction strip by drawing 2 lines to make thirds. Again, I did not measure that, but I eyeballed it. I kind of made it look like the best I could. And I'm going to go ahead and color that in. And do you see that I tried to make these about the same? I think this one ended up being a little bit longer, but they're about the same. And I'm going to call this 1/3, and then the fraction is 1/3. The unit fraction is 1/3, and then I write the fraction as 1/3. And I'm going to go ahead again and draw my 3rd fraction to represent the 4th, and I'm going to try to make it the same length as the 1/2 and the 3rd, and I'm going to break those up so that I have 4 equal parts. I'm going to shade in 1. So we call this unit fraction 1/4. And then that is written as a fraction as 1/4. Okay, 3rd graders, go ahead and pause the video until yours looks like mine. Okay, now here's what I want you to think about. I want you to think about noticings about these strips. What do you notice about the 1/2, the 3rd, and the 4th? Try and think of a couple things you notice about the way they're partitioned. Okay, third graders, what I notice is that the half is bigger than the third or the fourth, and the third is bigger than the fourth. So I'm noticing that the more parts I break up my fraction into, the smaller the parts get. Go ahead and write that. The more parts I partition into, the smaller the parts. Now remember, when I partitioned them, I was careful to make sure all of my rectangles were the same length. So once you have written that, go ahead and pause the video until that gets all written, and then we'll come back and we'll do the very next shape we're going to partition today. Third grade, go ahead and set these smaller fraction strips, the skinny ones, aside. We'll need those again later for tomorrow. And grab the other half of the original paper that you cut up. And we're going to work with doing rectangles on this side. Put that out of the way. So what I want you to do is I want you to please go ahead and fold this piece of paper like a hamburger. Not like a hot dog, but like a hamburger. And cut that in half. Again, you know the trick. If you don't have scissors, you can use. Now you end up with two halves. Go ahead and fold each half in half. So you end up with rectangles, but this kind, they're not the long and skinny kind, they're the short and fat kind. I'm going to do that again. Okay. So I will only need 3 of these for the part of the lesson. So I'm going to take one, set it aside. You won't need that. You will need 3. Now that you have the 3 fat rectangles, we're going to partition these, so get your pencil ready. The first one we're going to partition into half. So take your first piece of paper and fold it hamburger style in half. Now I probably could also have folded this hot dog style, and if you want to go that route, go for it. I just folded it in half because I think it'll be easier when I get to these other ones. So I'm going to take it and I'm going to draw a line right down the crease. I now have halves. You should too. I'm going to take my next paper and I'm going to turn this one not into halves but into fourths. So I'm going to fold it right in half, and then I'm going to fold it in half again. So I end up with this long, skinny rectangle. And then I'm going to unfold it and just draw lines where all of those creases are. So I cut it in half, and then I cut each of my halves into half. And I'm going to end up with fourths like that. Please do that. Now this next one, I'm going to make sixths. And just like when I make fourths, I start off by doing halves. When I make sixths, I try to start off by doing thirds. So I'm going to fold this until I get pretty close. Pretty close to exact thirds. Now I have 3 equal parts. I'm going to fold it back up, and I'm going to fold all of it in half. So I end up with a really long, skinny rectangle, and then when I unfold it, I'll have 6. So I'm going to go ahead and draw my lines. 5 lines will make 6 rectangles. 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that is 6. So right now you should have sixths, fourths, and halves. Go ahead and pause the video, work on these until these 3 are done. And when you're done making your fraction strips, come on back and we're gonna draw visual representations in our journal. Okay, third graders, what I want you to do is go ahead and in your journal, label I skipped a line just to make it neat and label it as a 2. We're now going to draw these rectangles. And remember, these rectangles are much different than these rectangles. So when I'm drawing my visual, I want to make sure that I'm representing that. So here I just used 1 line. Here I'm going to use 3, I think. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to bring it over about the same and come down 3. And I'm going to take this one right away. I'm going to partition it in half. I'm going to color in one side. I chose this side, but you could totally have done that side. Doesn't matter. Just make sure you're following along with me. The unit fraction is 1/2. And we write that as a fraction as 1/2. 2 parts, 1 shaded in. Okay, now we're going to do our fourths. So remember to try to make this rectangle the same size as this rectangle, or as close as you can to it. Okay, now I'm going to partition this into fourths by first cutting it in half and cutting each of my halves as closely as I can into halves. I'm going to go ahead and shade in 1/4. I chose to shade in that one. No rhyme or reason. You can shade in any one you want. Just do 1. And the unit fraction is 1/4. And we write that as 1/4. 1 part shaded, 4 parts total. Go ahead and draw your last fraction. Your last rectangle that you partitioned into 6. Start by doing your thirds. Now cutting each of your thirds in half, you'll end up with 6 pieces. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines. And then color one in, shade one in. Again, it doesn't matter which one, any one you want, just so that your paper looks like mine. And I'm going to call that 1/6. That's the unit fraction, and we write that 1/6. 1 shaded part to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 parts total. Okay, go ahead and pause the video until your journal looks like mine. Okay, third graders, here's something I want you to look at. Look at the halves. We have a half here, and we have a half here. But what do you notice? Think about what you notice about these halves. Let's compare the two together. So they're definitely not the same size. This one is much, much wider. And this one, the skinny one, is much longer, the half. So even though they're both halves, they're not the same size because why? Go ahead and whisper to someone sitting next to you or whisper to the television. Why do you think they're not the same? Why do you think 1/2 here is different than 1/2 here? That's right there, graders. What I'm noticing is that the halves are different because the whole was different. The whole fraction here is long and skinny, where the whole rectangle here, the whole rectangle here is long and skinny, while the whole rectangle there is short and fat. So because the whole was different, what 1/2 is to both of those is different. All right, third graders, if your paper looks like mine, you are done. Take a picture, send it to me. If you want some extra practice today, in those folders I dropped off at your house, you will have a fraction practice. You are welcome to work on the fraction practice packet for lessons 1, 2, or 3, but please do not go on to lesson 4. Again, if you or your family member wants you to have some extra fraction practice, can't hurt. You may do lessons 1, 2, or 3. I actually put the fraction packet in the plastic bag that says don't open yet. You can open it. Get out that packet, but don't go past 3, okay? All right, third graders, don't forget to send this to me so I know you were following along. And I would also really love to see your fraction strips. Hope you did those. If you didn't, you better do them now. All right, third graders, I hope you had fun making fractions with me. Take care of yourselves. Talk soon.